Right. Well, welcome everybody to the last painting session of the term. What I'm going to do in this demonstration is merely recap on all the different techniques and ideas that we've looked at over the term, so that you can go away and do your own painting, hopefully using at least some of these techniques. So here's one I did earlier. Because one of the first things we did was to learn how to do wet on dry. So if I take a bit of ultramarine, this is totally dry. If you're doing wet on dry, you have to have it absolutely dry. I actually painted that yesterday to make sure that it would be absolutely dry. So the thing to do if you're going to do wet on dry is to let it dry and then let it dry a bit more. That way around, you know that it's completely dry. And if you put a light color across it, you will see that it actually changes the color, depending on how dark or how light the color that you put across is. It hasn't actually gone green, it's just gone slightly darker. So one of the ways you could do this, for instance, if you're doing a house, when we did it last time, we put the shadows in first, and then we put the color on. You can, if you prefer, do the lightest color first, and then put the shadows in afterwards. Similarly, if I've got, if I put the shadows in first, let's make it a bit more interesting than that. Use that one. That's better. It's more fun, isn't it? Right. Now, I think this is permanent rose, which is transparent. Again, if I put that across that, again, we get the permanent rose, which is there. And as it goes over there, it just begins to look like a darker shade of the color that you originally put on. So that's when working wet on dry can be useful, because you've got time to paint your shadows if you're doing it this way, quietly and calmly and not getting a great big fuss about it. Or similarly, paint the whole building and just let it rest and then go back with equal calm, because being calm when you're painting watercolor is elusive. Right, so that was that. Now, you can, of course, do wet on dry, wet on wet. So there we have the wet. Now, if I took the permanent rose, probably the wrong way around, I should have done the other way around. So I can put permanent rose into that, and it's invading the space. So it's going from the permanent rose color I've got here into a sort of slight purple, and then into the blue. So if you were wanting, for instance, to create something round, if you put it down like that, and then just slightly dampen the edge as you were coming along, and then where are we? And then put in, well, disaster. I put in the top, and if we're going to put a background in, we could do that, so that it begins to look like something that's slightly rounded, because that has bled lightly into the water. So you can do wet and wet with water as well as with paint. So that's another technique that you've got at your command. If you've got something rounded, like a turret or maybe a bauble in the garden, or a collection of balloons at a child's party. If you put the colour in first, or if you wet it first and then introduce the colour and let it bleed, you get this lovely rounded shape where the colour fades. If you want it sharp, then you have to do wet on dry, because that gives you a nice sharp edge. Or the alternative, if you want to do, if you wanted to do it, you know, if you're in a hurry, if you, supposing put it down there, and you wanted this side to be there as well, if you just leave a slight line in between, and that line can get very thin if your hand doesn't shake, or if you can't see two lines instead of one. You see, by putting them close together and leaving that little gap, two things happen.
We can't see it online, ma'am.
There we are.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
By leaving that little gap, you do two things. One is you keep your two sides separate, and the other is it introduces a sparkle to your painting. And that sparkle is what gives life and vitality to what you're doing. Okay? The white paper is so precious in watercolors that cover it with circumspection and leave little gaps and sparkles wherever you can. Okay. Right. And the third way we use, that I taught you, was to use a dry brush. So you collect your paint, dry out your thing, and if you whisk the brush over the paper, you'll see it catches some places and not others. Now you can use that to texture a building. You can do it on top of a dry piece. I don't know if it's going to work, but I can try it. See, it just, so you can do it wet on dry, or you can do it on the white paper. If you do it on the white paper, you make it sparkle, which is nice. Another way of using it would be on sparkling water. So if you whisk your brush across when you're doing sparkling water, that's a quite effective way of doing it. Okay, right, that's those. Now I'll turn that piece of paper upside down so that we can, now, then I started to talk to you about using the brush to make shapes. So you can use the brush using the side and pulling the color down like that, rather than drawing the shape and coloring it in. You know, you can tell that looks like a painting, that looks like a kid's drawing. Okay. Yeah. So if you can use the biggest brush you can, and you actually fill the space as a block, the pigment goes down in a kindly fashion. And if you don't go back and fiddle with it, which is a great temptation, it isn't exactly right. It isn't quite a square. Shall I just? No, leave it. You know, if I tried to square that up, I'd make a muck of that, and I'd lose that little bit of sparkle. Right? Okay. Right, using the brush. Let's continue. Or if you have, I think that will work. If you roll your brush, if you roll the brush in the palette, you should come off with a nice point. And if your hand doesn't shake like mine, you can start off just touching the point on the paper, then press down on your brush, then twist it and bring it off. Try again. Down. And, yeah. Come on, try again, Steve. Yeah. Let's start with a point. Or you can do it the other way around. You can do it the other way around. You can start that way. See where I'm holding it? If you look at your brush, there's a fat bit round there. that's as far down as you want to be.
Under
Yes,
the
sir.
camera, please.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Okay, darling.
I
So
keep on
there's the
having to
press.
unmute to tell you.
Right, it's okay, Pat. So pressure, and then if you twist, you get that sort of leaf shape. And you can make it curl, so you can sort of bring it round and then press it that way and then take it off that way. Yeah, you can make any shape you like with your brush. You've used it sideways. Supposing it's a fluffy hill, if you have your brush flat, don't bring a point, see? And if you just push it up like that, then you get that sort of fluffy edge, which could be a tree in the distance. Okay. How else can you? It's the pressure, the variation of the pressure. The more you press, the more paint you get out. So if you're not pressing lightly, you'll get the point on the thin line. And if you press more, you get more paint out of the body of what it is you're trying to create. Right, I think that's basically that. So the other thing I talked about was actually mixing paint. Remember, I told you to pick up the paint from, if you wet it slightly to start with, don't wet all your colors, only wet the ones you're going to use. If you wet all your colors, you're leaching out the gum arabic, which helps the pigment stick to the paper, and you're degrading your paints, making them useless. So only wet the one you're going to use, and then you mix the paint in the palette. This was something that I picked up last year, believe it or not. Didn't used to do this. I used to wonder why I couldn't paint. I still don't know why I can't paint. So you mix it so that you're mixing the pigment and breaking down the gum arabic. When you put the paint on the paper, what happens is the pigment goes on, the gum arabic attaches it to the paper, and the water disappears. That's the essence of watercolor. And that's why if you poke at a half-dry piece of painting, you get a disaster, because you're moving something that's nearly stuck and not quite. And all you get is disaster. As long as the thing is wet, you can move the paint around. But as soon as it's sort of half dry or nearly dry or going that way, as soon as the light's gone off, it stopped shining, then leave it alone. And the last thing I talked about was limiting your colors. If you stick to 3 or 4 colors, if we use blue, and then I had the permanent rose, didn't I? There's the permanent rose. And the other one I had was, I think, this one. Right? Now, those are the standard 3 primaries. If I mix a bit of this yellow in with the permanent rose, then I've got a sort of orangey color. And if I put more yellow in it, it goes a bit more orangey, sort of, depending on what colors you're using. If I mix the blue and the permanent rose together, I get that sort of color. Or if I increase the red, I get a more reddy one. And if I mix all 3 together, all 3 are transparent, I get a gray, or if I'm really thick with the paint, I get a black.
Can I ask you something?
Certainly.
I'm not sure what's transparent and what isn't, and how do you know?
Well, that was going to be the next lesson, which didn't happen. Right. Ways of
Could you
finding
push
out
it up a
whether
bit so we can see the black, please? Thank
Sorry.
you. That's okay.
There we are.
There
There's
we
the
are. That's
black.
better. Yeah.
Right. If you look at the tube of paint, if you're
Yeah.
working with tubes, it usually tells you
Right.
whether it's transparent or not. It has a little symbol on it. And if it's a square like that, it's transparent. And if it's a square like that, it's semi-transparent. And I think there's another one where the square is like that. I think that's semi-opaque. And then finally, there's one where it's all blacked in. And that
So it's
means
basically to do with the pigment.
yes.
Yeah.
And yes, basically. All the metal colours, the cadmiums and the chromes, cobalt, are opaque.
Yeah.
Now, they're not wrong to use. You just got to be careful using them, because if you mix opaque colours together, you get mud very, very quickly. Right. So if you want your work to be transparent, you start with your transparent colours. We do use the other colours, but I haven't got there yet. Okay. So next time we do watercolor, I'll be probably talking about that. The other way to do it, if you want to try your own box, is to draw a black line with a marker pen, a waterproof marker pen, down the page, mix your color and go across it. If you can see the black line through that, it's transparent. If you can't see the black line, it's opaque.
Oh, right. Okay.
Dead simple. If your colors are artist student colors, Cotman or Georgian, I think, or is that one? Anyway, they will be opaque because they're student colors. They cut down on the pigment and add in more filler. So the more filler that's in, the more opaque your colors are going to be. So it's going to be difficult to achieve. You can get a transparent wash, but when you put another one on top of it, like you were doing here, what you get is an opaque. It blinds it. You don't get two transparent colors working like that. So you have to work a little differently. If you're a student, the best thing to do is to buy the most expensive ingredients you can afford, because they help you. Really top quality brush and really top, only buy half a dozen top quality artist colors, avoiding the opaque ones if you can to start with. That should be enough. You'll be able to work with them and learn and get satisfactory things out of it. Right, well, I've gone through what we learnt this term. We did quite a lot, actually. I'm quite pleased with it. And most people seem to take on board what I was trying to say.
Yep.
I just want to say a few words about next term. If you all like to join me, that's fine. I'd love to see you all. I'm planning on doing pastel to begin with. If you've got pastels, please bring them, because you obviously know what you're doing and you enjoy doing them. If you haven't got pastels, don't buy any. You can borrow mine for the first session or two. I've got wax, absolutely wax. And pastels is a bit of a Marmite medium. Some people love it, some people loathe it. So it'd be really sad if you bought some pastels and then decide this is not for you. Okay. If you don't want to do pastels and want to continue watercolor, that's fine by me. There's plenty of time in the class for me to help you individually if you want to continue with the watercolor or colored pencils. Where is she? Colored pencil. That's fine as far as I'm concerned. And again, don't buy any paper, because I've got it. I've got it already for you. Proper pastel paper, so to sort you all off on the same thing.
Are you doing soft pastels?
Yes, it'll be soft pastels first. Yes, that's another ball game. Technique is entirely different, as you know, because you've used them.
I've never used soft. Well, I tried soft pastels and I didn't like them. But I just adore oil pastels.
Yes, I thought you would actually. It's more your thing. It's more your thing. Right. Okay. So what you need, if you're coming next time, what you need is a picture of something you would like to do, and a padded board. One of the things you really need if you're doing soft pastels is a board padded with newsprint. Will do. a piece of cardboard will do, you know, the back of one of these things. That covered with 2 or 3 layers of newspaper or something like that.
Kitchen roll?
Kitchen roll, probably. I haven't tried kitchen roll, but probably. Just cover the whole board and then attach your paper on top. The thing about it is that the pastel will give a bit into the surface because it's padded, and that just goes on much more kindly. If you try to use pastel on a hard surface, you pick up all the knobs and bumps on the hard surface, whatever it is. And even if it's smooth, it's just unkind and off-putting. So if you bring a padded board, the piece of paper that I've got for you is, let me see, I'll send you the dimension. You know, it's not that. We're not starting till February, so we've got plenty of time. So look out for a picture you would like to paint. Look out for a board, piece of cardboard. Get plenty of cardboard boxes this time of year. That would be big enough, and then just get it covered so that you're organised and ready. And I think that's it as far as next term is concerned.